It's 5 p.m. here in Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome to the World Today. I'm Joke Rogers. Here's what's coming up. U.S. President Donald Trump issues flurry of executive orders on everything from immigration and climate to pardoning people convicted over the 2021 Capitol riot. The World Health Organization calls on the U.S. to reconsider its stance after President Trump signed an executive order to begin the process of withdrawal from the health body. Plus, Donald Trump's inauguration becomes a backdrop for protests of diverse grievances across the world. The World Today begins right now. Welcome again, everyone. U.S. President Donald Trump begins his first full day back at the White House after signing dozens of executive orders following his inauguration. On Monday, he began the process of withdrawing the U.S. from the World Health Organization and Paris climate deal. He has also declared a national emergency at the southern border. He issued nearly 1,600 pardons in connection with the Capitol riots on January 6, 2021. And many prisoners are expected to be released over the next few days. Among his early moves was an order to deport millions of the people who he describes as criminal aliens. Mr. Trump also declared an emergency on the U.S.-Mexico border and designated drug cartels as terrorist organizations. More globally, Mr. Trump ordered that the U.S. to begin its withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement and the World Health Organization. He also signed an order addressing gender, declaring that there are only two genders, male and female, and that cannot be changed.
So we paid $500 million to World Health when I was here, and I terminated it. China, with 1.4 billion people, we have 350 to pay. We have, nobody knows what we have because so many people came in illegally, but let's say we have 325. They had 1.4 billion. They were paying 39 million, we were paying 500 million. It seemed a little unfair to me because we're going to probably stop buying oil from Venezuela. We don't need their oil. I'll be meeting with President Putin.
When do you think?
I don't know. I can't. It's being set up.
Your first trip for that might be, sir?
But Zelensky wants to make a deal. I don't know if Putin does. He might not. I don't know. He should make a deal. I think he's destroying Russia by not making a deal. I think Russia's going to be in big trouble. You take a look at their economy. You take a look at the inflation in Russia. So I would hope. I got along with him great, and you know, I would hope he wants to make a deal. I tell you what, we have. Our country has an amazing economic future. I really believe that.
What kind of universal tariff if you did want?
Well, you put a universal tariff on anybody doing business in the United States because they're coming in and they're stealing our wealth, they're stealing our jobs, they're stealing our companies, they're hurting our companies. So you put a tariff on to keep them from doing it.
The executive orders also include an end to birthright citizenship and curtailing diversity provisions. In addition, President Trump revoked 78 executive orders previously signed by Joe Biden. Mr. Trump also hinted at a deal to end the war between Russia and Ukraine and stop oil purchases from Venezuela.
Merit is the lodestar of hiring decisions
as per the Supreme Court.
Other matters, yes, sir.
Well, an emboldened Donald Trump declared Golden Age of America as he reclaimed the presidency on Monday, promising a crackdown on illegal immigration and portraying himself as a savior chosen by God to rescue a faltering nation. The inauguration completes a triumphant return for a political disruptor who was twice impeached, survived two assassination attempts, was convicted in a criminal trial and faced charges of attempting to overturn his 2020 election loss. He's the first president in more than a century to win a second term after losing the White House and the first felon to occupy the White House. Mr. Trump outlined a series of sweeping executive orders, and analysts say that these are the first steps in enacting a far-reaching agenda that would reshape the government while testing the limits of presidential authority. Walter Olson, a senior fellow at libertarian think tank, the Cato Institute said Mr. Trump's supporters may be disappointed.
People who voted for Trump sometimes invest this enormous hope that he will make the country completely different, that he will reverse whatever trend they're most upset about, whether it's the high number of foreign-born people or whether it's culture changing in ways that they don't approve of. And inevitably, and I must say with any president, not just Trump, a lot of those things are going to be disappointed. People get disappointed in one of the old sales pitches, and he's off to a new one, and maybe it's interesting, and maybe you want to follow his logic on it. And so even people who have been disappointed on a number of the past things, he gets the hook, like a great salesman, to intrigue them about what if this began to happen? Have you ever considered that America might, be off to new heights in this thing you've never even thought about? And before long, again, he's got their attention. He is the great attention getter.
Well, world leaders have been congratulating President Donald Trump on his inauguration, many urging stronger alliances or continued cooperation between their countries and the United States in carefully crafted social media posts and statements. Mr. Trump's return to the White House portends a seismic shakeup in international relations with the new president's executive orders as world leaders brace for new tariffs on goods and the impact of Mr. Trump's America First agenda. Some populist leaders celebrated Mr. Trump's return, including Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who called the U.S. president a dear friend, and Hungary's Viktor Orbán, who declared, "Now it's our turn to shine." But not all the messages were congratulatory. Some leaders expressed their anger at remarks Mr. Trump made during his Inauguration Day speech. Panama's President Jose Raul Molino rejected Mr. Trump's promise that the U.S. would be taking back the Panama Canal. The vital waterway in Central America was built by the U.S., but it's now controlled by Panama.
Congratulations, President Trump. Sarah and I send our warmest wishes to you, Melania, and the American people on your second inauguration as President of the United States. I believe that working together again, we will raise the U.S.-Israel alliance to even greater heights. I'm confident that we will complete the defeat of Iran's terror axis and usher in a new era of peace and prosperity for our region. On behalf of the people of Israel, I also want to thank you for your efforts in helping free Israeli hostages. I look forward to working with you to return the remaining hostages, to destroy Hamas's military capabilities and end its political rule in Gaza, and to ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel. I'm sure, Mr. President, that under your leadership, the best days of our alliance are yet to come.
Він сильна людина. Я бажаю успіху президенту Трампу, всій Америці. Українці готові.
And that was the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky speaking there. Like we've mentioned earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order to begin the process of withdrawing the U.S. from the World Health Organization. The newly inaugurated U.S. president approved the document after arriving at the White House. It was one of dozens of executive orders he put his signature on day one in office. This marks the second time Mr. Trump has ordered the U.S. to be pulled out of the WHO. The president was critical of how the international body handled the COVID-19 pandemic and began the process of pulling out from the Geneva-based institution during the pandemic. President Joe Biden later reversed that decision. The orders signed on Monday, January 20, mean the U.S. will leave the United Nations health body in 12 months and stop all financial contributions to its work. Of 196 member states, the U.S. is by far the largest individual funder, contributing almost a fifth of the total budget. If that goes, and no other nations step up to fill the gap, the ability of the WHO to respond to emergencies such as an Ebola outbreak or Mpox, let alone another COVID-19 style pandemic, could be compromised. Well, Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez also issued a scathing response to the decision, saying that Mr. Trump was drunk with arrogance, but outgoing Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau struck a more conciliatory tone despite Mr. Trump's recent jibes about making Canada the 51st U.S. state, an indication that he will impose a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico on February 1. Trudeau congratulated Mr. Trump and said Canada looks forward to working with the new administration while protecting and defending the interests of Canadians. Well, let's get more reactions to this. Joining us is Professor Bola Akinteriwa from Achievers University in Ondo State. Thank you, Professor, for joining us on the program today. So what are your thoughts on President Trump returning to the White House and the flurry of activities we've seen in the last 24 hours? We'll try and get back to the professor in a couple of minutes, but let's take some other stories as we continue with our reactions from across the world on the inauguration of Donald Trump as the 47th president of the United States and his activities in the last 24 hours. Well, it's business as usual on the U.S.-Mexico border as Donald Trump takes office for a second term, promising a sweeping border crackdown at the San Isidro border crossing, one of the busiest in the world, connecting San Diego to Tijuana. Travelers gave their verdict on what another Trump presidency could mean in an inaugural address shortly after being sworn in into a second term in the White House. Mr. Trump said he would declare illegal immigration a national emergency, send troops to the U.S.-Mexico border, and reinstate his Remain in Mexico policy, all of which he signed in an executive order. Mr. Trump also said he would seek to stop all illegal entries and detain all migrants caught crossing illegally as part of a sweeping immigration crackdown that includes deportations.
Right now, it looks like it's spiking, and I know that Trump's just now coming in, so I imagine it's going to get a lot worse with time. But yeah, I see it with the people already, and I feel like the stress and the anxiety in people is a lot higher than typical right now.
Meanwhile, several hundred people gathered in a park several miles from the central Washington, D.C. inauguration proceedings, protesting a wide range of issues as President Trump was sworn into office. The protesters, braving icy conditions, expressed concerns spanning environmental issues, LGBTQ rights, immigration, race relations, and pro-Palestinian rights. Many pointed out that the inauguration coincided with the Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a national holiday honoring the civil rights leader.
We didn't want to be part of the masses that were coming here to celebrate like evil and division, It was a little harsh to call people evil, obviously. Not all conservatives are evil, but there's a lot of hate, and there's just a lot of values that they hold that they are trying to turn into like rallying cries for like fascists and racists and whatnot. It's like they're taking all the resentment that they have, and they're turning pain into a virtue. They're turning other people's pain into virtue. For them, they're celebrating other people suffering, and they take pride in that. So it's important for us to come out here to kind of stand against that and be with, community of people who care about the pain people are going through instead of reveling in it.
Because America, in its desperation to maintain itself, is, how do we say, the American empire is falling, and they're trying to maintain a system of inequity. This is not a homogeneous nation, it's a racist nation, and they're trying to maintain that system of inequity.
I'm still fired up. I feel like we can get a little bogged down and apathetic, but being surrounded by people who are also fired up to, fight the climate crisis, end war, I think that was really important to me, to be kind of surrounded by people like that.
For more reactions now in the Middle East, it's a mix of hope and concern as President Trump begins his second term. Israelis in Jerusalem raise hopes that the U.S. President Donald Trump's second term will bring calm to the region, while others expressed concerns that the day after his inauguration, a truce between Israel and Hamas that suspended a 15-month-old war which has devastated the Gaza Strip and inflamed the Middle East took effect on the eve of Mr. Trump's inauguration.
I feel that he is dangerous, and I feel that he is not fitted to be president. And at the same time, I think every person of goodwill has to wish and hope against expectations that things go okay for America and for Israel and for the Palestinians and for the world. The world is a dangerous and a complicated place. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 4 years. Market meltdowns, 9/11. And you need a president who's serious and he's not serious, who is focused and he's not focused, who has world-class people around him and the people around him are not world-class. And it feels very dangerous and very scary.
I hope he will continue to support Israel. It doesn't matter if I'm happy or not, or if anybody is happy. We're going to see what he's going to do for Israel and what he's going to do for America, mostly. I hope he's going to support Israel and every other country that fights evil people, like what's happening now.
For me, Mr. Trump is mainly a redhead person, very angry one, very aggressive. But who knows, maybe he will be the one who will bring the peace to the Middle East, not because he likes peace, but because he's a bully. And maybe in this area, that's what we need. I don't know.
Generally positive. The last time he was elected, I was more skeptical, but now I feel more positive, more optimistic about his coming term. I think that he's going to bring greater security to the United States and to Israel. I think that Israel now has a better partner, so that we here can feel more stable and secure.
Meanwhile, in Gaza, displaced Palestinians in Khan Yunis say they do not believe anything will change in Gaza with the U.S. under the administration of President Donald Trump, while Palestinians in the West Bank and Jerusalem say they are waiting to see the acts of the newly inaugurated president. They are unsure that his administration will make a difference.
As Palestinians and Arabs in general, we despised Trump's first presidency for his recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of the state of Israel, and for his agreement to have parts of the Syrian Golan annexed to the state of Israel. But after the genocide that took place under Biden, with the support and total complicity of Joe Biden, we look forward to a period free of Biden, and with Donald Trump taking office with more balance and just rule and order that would probably fix what Biden has demolished and destroyed during his presidency in the Middle East.
Welcome back, everyone. Donald Trump, now U.S. president, had promised that the Middle East is going to get solved, but offered few details on how he might achieve such an outcome. When he returns to the White House, his America First agenda will be challenged by the United States' involvement in Israel's war in Gaza and the humanitarian crisis that has yet to be relieved at that time. The Middle East that Mr. Trump inherits from the Biden administration has undergone seismic shifts over the past year. Iran and Israel have directly attacked each other's territories. Israel has militarily dominated Hamas and Hezbollah, and one of the Islamic Republic's most important Arab allies, the Assad regime in Syria, crumbled in a matter of weeks after half a century in power. So what does this all mean? We're attempting to break all of this down. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent Maria Bird joins us now for more on this. Hello, Maria. A busy few days for you, I must imagine.
Yes, how are you? It's been quite a busy couple of days, and I expect it to be a busy week.
Certainly. So what's the mood in the country and the nation's capital? A new day under a new government.
You're exactly right. A new day, a new government. And the U.S. has obviously been through quite a bit of challenges over the past few years if we really look at all of this that's been happening. And so I think that the mood is one of some anxiousness. I think a lot of hope. I think that the mood is understanding that change is going to happen. And the question is really, I think people are watching to see how quickly the change can happen and what the real impacts of the change. I think people are a bit unclear as to what will be the true impacts. I think some, obviously, there's some fear, but I think people are really trying to move past fear. And look at the hope for the future and really how this could potentially have a positive impact on the U.S. government, but really a positive impact potentially on the entire world. People trying to remove their own personal feelings, trying to move past party lines and look at how to move the country forward.
And how are people, reacting to the flurry of executive orders the president has signed? There's so many of them, almost too much to count.
You're exactly correct. I think we knew prior to Inauguration Day that there was going to be a flurry of executive orders. It's typically not the typical protocols when presidents come in office, but again, this is a person that has been president before, has sat out for 4 years, and is now back. And so that is also not traditional in the nature in which how presidents are elected in the U.S. So he's very familiar with the ways in which to get things done. He's also very familiar with how long it can take, and oftentimes 4 years is not a lot of time to be able to make marked change. So he's walking in the door hoping that the change can happen a bit faster this time, and these executive orders are his way in which he hopes to execute those.
Yeah, and let's pick on a few of this. The birthright citizenship, a very popular policy in the United States. Help us understand how this could play out, because this is not in the U.S. Constitution. Many mothers probably have been planning since 2024 that they will have their babies in the United States, even in this new year.
You're correct. This is something that is supported, and it's a constitutional right, birthright. If we really look at it in the United States, most of us were not. Their birthright started with a parent that had immigrated here and that had their child here. And so the U.S. is definitely a majority made up, other than Native Americans, of individuals who migrated here. So all of our history goes back to somewhere beyond here, except for the Native Americans. So this will be a very interesting executive order that's put in place as the Constitution does state that people do have the birthright. So the expectation is that we're going to see quite a few legal cases brought up against this. We probably will make it all to the Supreme Court. So I think the question is whether or not he would be able to execute that. And I think people are a bit concerned around it, but I think there's less concern because it is a constitutional right.
Right. I need you to explain this a bit more. This birthright executive order, is it that those who already have U.S. passports, but do not have parents who are United States nationals, or those who are just going to have their babies in the United States?
Yeah, so this is for exactly as you said, those who are having their babies. So if you have migrated to the U.S., whether you're on a work visa, whether you're on a student visa, or whether it's illegal migration here, which is a lot goes into the DACA, the Dreamers Act that the U.S. has had in place for quite some time now. So those individuals who are actually born on U.S. soil have the right for U.S. citizenship. Their parents may not have the right for U.S. citizenship, but if they were born here, have the right for U.S. citizenship. And that's a constitutional mandate. And so the question is whether or not, if this executive order, once this executive order, people start to act on it, if the courts will then vote against that and return that, overturn that, and allow people to be able to stay here. But the question, I think, for today is if they begin to send babies back to where their parents are from, the whole family back, how long will it take for those individuals if the courts do overturn it and state that it's constitutionally that they have the right to be here. So, but again, that also runs into the situation around keeping families together. So if a baby has a right to be here, but their parent doesn't, what is that going to mean, obviously, for the government systems around orphans? It becomes a whole larger consideration and conversation, but it's expected that the courts will begin to hear cases around this if individuals that are born here are asked to return home.
Just before I let you go, what about the executive order that says, you know, Mexicans should stay in Mexico? Have we started seeing any action on that?
Well, we're expected to see what is called ICE here, which is the individuals that typically go out and do mass raids for individuals that are illegally in the United States, and they then begin to deport them back. We're expecting that we will see that this week. That was one of the promises, and as you said, executive order, that we would see large numbers of illegal immigrants, especially those who are presumed, potentially who have done any type of criminal activity in the U.S., as being deported back to where they're originating country. And so I think that is something that we're expecting. We have not yet seen specific incidents, but they have been charged with that. And they have also been charged with if additional defense support is needed from the military, that will be provided at the border as well, or to support any of the ICE efforts.
Right, Maria, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Let's look elsewhere. In Hungary, Trump fans celebrated the president. Supporters of Donald Trump gathered at Liberty Square outside of the United States Embassy in Budapest on Monday to watch the inauguration of the former U.S. president, now U.S. president, marked by displays of Hungary flags and images of Mr. Trump. Many attendees viewed Mr. Trump's previous term as a period of peace and free of wars, adding that they are hopeful for a similar era of stability and prosperity given the challenging global conditions in recent years. A journalist and friend of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban addressed the crowd, anticipating the return of normalcy under Mr. Trump's leadership, a sentiment that resonated with the attendees. Prime Minister Orban has been a long-time supporter of President Trump and has been betting on Mr. Trump's victory in the 2024 U.S. election all along.
Protect and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John.
Well, let's go to the United Arab Emirates as we connect with our UAE correspondent, Mayowa Adegoke, who joins us to talk about what this all means for the region as Donald Trump begins his next term in office. Mayowa, if you can hear me, oh, I see you. What's the feel where you are about about Donald Trump's return to the White House?
I'd say it's a mixed bag. A lot of people are cautiously optimistic. And why is that? It's because he's back for a second time. They've had a taste the first time. They probably know what to expect. A lot of people use the word unpredictable for Donald Trump, but I think they'll also regard him as firm, as someone who people will listen to. So if you also look about the history of his first term, how he was able to broker the Abraham Accord. So on that note, people are optimistic that he can do something about restoring peace in the region. But again, Trump is Trump. And from one of the videos we've seen, he's talked about the war in Israel versus Gaza. And he's also talked about how it's their war, he said, but we do believe he should play some role in it. He's shown that he would like to do something about it. But the results, we are all waiting to see.
And, now when Joe Biden was, the president, the U.S. was one of those mediators in the war in the Middle East, the Israel and, Hezbollah war, and then the other after effects of that. And, it turned out quite well in the end, as we now have a ceasefire, we have prisoner exchanges. Everybody believes that, a Trump presidency will also bring back calm, but that calm was restored at the tail end of the Biden presidency. But, as people have said, nobody knows what to expect with Donald Trump, as we saw during his first term in office. How does the Middle East perceive the relationship with Mr. Trump that it will be in his second term, perhaps different from the first time?
So a lot has happened between his first term and this term. Case in point, BRICS, I'd say, got a lot more power and energy and became a lot more pronounced and visible. Of course, we do know that Trump has spoken about that and has promised to, or threatened rather, to sanction all that. So I would say that he will have to build again, right? He's lost momentum and now he will have to build again. Like it or not, Trump is the president of what they would say the most powerful nation in the world. As long as the economy is concerned, you cannot ignore America. Actually, nobody can ignore America. So yes, you are the president of the most powerful nation, but you do have to build back up because, again, the Middle East is keen on sort of building its own presence, showing that, listen, we can also stand for ourselves, we can make headway. So there's a lot of work to be done in terms of building the momentum again. Trump cannot be ignored. So I expect that a lot of people will still listen, will still be open to conversations. Plus, you cannot forget the economic side, the business side. Already from the peace accords, the UAE and Israel have done over 100, $500 billion, I beg your pardon, in trade. So a lot has happened in that regard, and we expect that a lot more will happen.
And I believe that, most countries have, cordial relations, friendships, so that the world will be a better place. How do you think that the relationship between the United States and, countries in the UAE will play out?
I expect it to be progressive. Again, look at it from both sides. There's the economic side, plus everybody wants peace in the Middle East. If you are in the Middle East, you do want peace. So it is this, what I like to call Big Brother of the world, playing the Big Brother role and saying, okay, let's everybody come back to the table. Let's broker peace. What do you want? What do you want? How can we make, how can we make compromises? Plus the trade side. Who wants to be on the bad side of the strongest currency in terms of doing business? Like the world economically is hedged against the dollar. So nobody really wants to go against that, at least not for now. But if BRICS does take life, if Russia does accomplish what it wants to do in terms of, okay, let's find another system outside of the dollar, then that's a conversation for the future. But as of now, the dollar is still king. So you listen to the president of the nation with the king currency, I guess.
Yes, and well, what's still also king is the black gold. Talking about crude oil, Donald Trump has said a lot. America will begin to drill again. They want to have their own crude oil, and, ignore, well, essentially, the rest of the world in that regard. As the UAE, Saudi Arabia and others, they're oil countries as well, crude oil countries. What does this portend if they don't have, big buyers like the United States?
Well, Trump may have these plans, he may have shared them, but these things don't happen overnight.
Yes, certainly.
And whether you like it or not, at least Saudi Arabia is still a big player in the market. So yes, it might be his agenda, but it will take time. And until such a time as America is able to stand by itself without anyone's support, he will have to play the game as well. So it's not about just switching a magic wand and saying, okay, this is what we want, everybody fall in line. I don't see that happening. Let's not forget that there's a reason why a lot of the, some of the Middle Eastern countries are also supporting BRICS. Again, I always make reference to that because that's one thing we've seen since Trump's absence in office really spring up. And let's not forget all the drama that happened in the oil industry when Trump was away, and how the West quoted, the Arab nations when Russia was sort of blacklisted. And you saw how that played out, right? So yes, the Arab nations were open and welcoming to those conversations, but did they essentially do what the West wanted? Not exactly. So a lot is at play here, and Trump will still have to play that game. There has to be a give and take eventually.
Right, and finally, Mayowa, we've had a lot of reactions from world leaders, from people in different countries, either congratulating Donald Trump for his second coming, or saying that they are depressed and they are not happy that he's back on the throne, White House throne, so to speak. Have you had any feelers from where you are? What are the people saying, or are they not just interested in what's going on in America? I'm talking about the regular people, not the people in the kingdom.
So you do know that the UAE is made up of over 200 nationalities. So it really is a melting pot of a lot of people in the world. Yes, people will always be divided along party lines, along, oh, I like this, or I like that. So what you'll find here is not much different from what you find elsewhere in the world. However, for those who are business-minded, they do prefer Trump. You do know that cryptocurrency is a big thing here in the UAE. A lot of people, follow cryptocurrency. Even the government here is very pro-cryptocurrency. So for anyone who's business-minded, they do appreciate what Trump represents for cryptocurrency. And so for that, they will like Trump. And even outside of cryptocurrency, I do remember I was in Saudi Arabia, in Saudi Arabia and Riyadh, just a few months ago at the FII conference, and there was a poll that was taken right at the conference about which president people wanted to see and which president was better for business, if it was Trump or if it was Kamala Harris at the time. A lot of people went for Trump. And so that just goes to show you that money speaks a lot sometimes, so people go where the money is.
Right, Mayowa, thank you for your time.
It's good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Right. And as Washington witnesses the historic comeback of Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States, it marks an important time for the global community as a new chapter unfolds, with a strong emphasis on the America First policy and the introduction of the Prosper Africa initiative. His administration stand on trade, tariffs, immigration, military and foreign policy present both challenges and opportunities for African nations as foreign policy priorities for the new administration solidify and the transition team reimagines U.S. engagement with Africa and U.S. approach to international development. Relations with the African continent might be seeing dramatic changes. Analysts predict his presidency could redefine U.S.-Africa relations, balancing American interests with potential economic growth for African countries. The global community will be closely watching to see if a sustainable partnership can be forged or if different priorities will create obstacles. Welcome back. And for those in Britain, the mood there is a mix of fears and optimism about the prospect of President Trump's second term as president. While some British residents are confident Mr. Trump is a good choice for America, others believe he's no good for the United States or any country at large.
Donald Trump is an absolute waste of space, in my opinion. He's no good for any country. That's all I've got to say.
I'm very optimistic about it. I think it's the change that America needs, and I think he's good for America, and therefore it'd be good for us.
The man's in really deep pain, and he needs love and compassion. Actually, it makes me feel really emotional in how he treats the world and people. And I just feel sorry for wherever he's coming from, to be honest. But, you know, he's obviously suffered some really deep trauma, and somebody needs to help him.
Pretty good. I work in US healthcare recruiting, so there's going to be a lot of private equity backers pretty happy about that.
It's a bit scary, I think, for everyone over here, mostly around like the war and the deals that he's promised to make with that, and what effects that has for us maybe moving troops over there. That's the main thing that I'm thinking about.
I really believe it's going to be something much better than we had until now. I have a lot of hopes on him, and we'll see how it will go.
Some other Britons say there will be changes, but it's going to have both positives and negatives.
Yeah, I'm personally a big fan of Trump in the sense of he makes bold decisions when needed. It's hard to tell what's going to happen in the future, but I think going forward it's a good thing for America and a good thing for the world. So, yeah.
I think change has got both positives and negatives, so I think some of it will be for the good, and some of it is maybe things I may not necessarily personally agree with, but ultimately he was elected, so I think on the whole it's probably going to be for the good.
I'm really worried about the climate. You know, it feels like Donald Trump's only thinking about the here and now, not the future of the world, and it's just a big concern for what's happening in the world, really. So we'll see. You never know, it may be good, but I'm not convinced it's going to be a brilliant thing.
I feel like it's a good change. He's done a few good things. He's brought TikTok back, so all good things.
Well, we know this is not Mr. Trump's first rodeo as President of the United States. Back in 2016, he became the first Republican president who had no prior political experience. Our next report takes a look at his first term in office.
Without any political experience, Donald Trump became the 45th president of the United States, taking office in January 2016. During the primaries, he defeated more than a dozen rivals to win the Republican nomination. While he lost the popular vote, he defeated former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton by winning a majority of the Electoral College votes. His campaign slogan was, "Make America Great Again."
From this day forward.
As president, he signed a major tax reform bill into law and oversaw a reduction of federal regulations. The Trump administration also renegotiated trade agreements with several countries.
I am announcing today that the United States...
Other domestic priorities included Supreme Court and federal judiciary appointments, increased military budgets, aggressive border and immigration control, criminal justice reform, and the reduction of prescription drug prices. In foreign policy, the Trump administration moved the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, a controversial issue. He also brokered normalization agreements between Israel and a number of countries.
The motion is agreed to. The Senate, sitting as a court of impeachment, stands adjourned sine die.
In 2019, the House of Representatives impeached President Trump based on allegations of obstruction of Congress and abuse of power. He became the first U.S. president impeached in the country's history. The Senate acquitted Trump on both articles of impeachment.
Today, our nation has achieved a medical miracle.
In 2021, the Trump administration was consumed with the coronavirus pandemic. The U.S. recorded its first case on January 20, 2020. Critics argue that Trump's response to the pandemic was delayed and did not sufficiently encourage public health practices to reduce the spread of the virus. Trump himself was infected with the virus but recovered soon after.
How you doing, man? Vote now.
Trump lost re-election to Democratic candidate Joe Biden in 2020, but publicly claimed widespread voter fraud had affected the outcome. Supporters of the Trump campaign traveled to Washington, D.C. for a Save America rally on January 6, 2021.
Now it is up to Congress to confront.
Trump addressed large crowds on the ellipse near the White House and encouraged attendees to protest the counting of Electoral College votes in Congress. The rally turned violent when the president's supporters overwhelmed law enforcement, breaching the United States Capitol and disrupting the vote count. 5 people died as a result of the violence, and the Capitol complex suffered millions of dollars in damage. On January 13, 2021, Trump's actions resulted in the House of Representatives approving another article of impeachment, the incitement of insurrection. Now he's up against U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, looking to be the 47th President of the United States. Donald Trump was born in Queens, New York, on June 14, 1946. In 2005, he married Melania Noss. They have one son, Barron. Donald Trump also has 4 adult children from previous marriages: Donald Jr., Ivanka, Eric, and Tiffany.
Renowned Indian sand artist Sudarshan Patnaik dedicated a sand art piece to U.S. President Donald Trump on a beach in Puri, a coastal city in India's eastern Odisha state, on Sunday. The sand art, which had a mural of Mr. Trump's face and the U.S. Capitol building, was reportedly 47 feet in length, a nod to Mr. Trump becoming the 47th President of the United States. And there's one man in Pakistan who's been capitalizing on Donald Trump's star power. Salim Bagga, a street vendor who some believe has a striking resemblance to President of the United States. This apparent likeness attracts crowds in eastern Punjab, and they get more than just a selfie. He sings to them as he sells them his kheer, a type of rice pudding. We managed to get in touch with him, and he sent us a video serenading ahead of the Inauguration Day. VIP Donald Trump pudding. It's with butter and milk. It's ice cream with milk and cream. VIP Donald Trump ice cream with milk. He also has a proposal for Mr. Trump. My wish is that Donald Trump would invite me to the U.S. I will really be delighted to visit him and see him. Oh my God, that's hilarious. Well, that's our program today. Thank you so much for watching. Jokia Rogers.